All right, today we are diving into a really tempting, but maybe dangerous, idea from the philosopher Søren Kierkegaard. We're talking about a life lived entirely for pleasure, for novelty, for that immediate rush. On the surface, it looks like the ultimate form of freedom, but as we're about to see, it's hiding a pretty profound trap.
And that really brings up the central question for us, doesn't it? If you build your life around chasing the next interesting thing, the next moment of pure gratification, are you actually free? Or is something else going on? Kierkegaard's answer is, well, it's pretty startling. So, to really get his answer, we have to start where a lot of us do, with that immediate, almost magnetic pull of pleasure. This is what Kierkegaard calls the aesthetic stage of existence. What's so fascinating here is that the aesthetic life isn't necessarily evil or bad. It's pre-moral. The person living this way, the aesthetes, as he calls them, isn't asking, is this right or wrong? No, they're asking, is this interesting or is this boring? Their whole world is defined by that immediate gratification. Things like power, wealth, or just plain sensory pleasure. So who is this aesthete? Well, think of a character like Don Juan, right? The classic pleasure seeker. He isn't really one unified person so much as a series of moments, just bouncing from one experience to the next with zero reflection. The aesthete will do anything to avoid a choice that would actually define them, that would lock them into a stable identity. They'd much rather stay a spectator in their own life, always keeping their options open. And here, of course, is the catch. There's always a catch. That rush of novelty, it always fades. The pleasure wears off. The satisfaction just doesn't last. And what rushes in to fill that void is the aesthete's absolute greatest enemy. This brings us to the main conflict in the aesthete's story. And the antagonist isn't a person or some moral code. It's this deep, existential dread that threatens to suck the meaning out of everything. And he is not being dramatic here. For Kierkegaard, boredom is not just that minor annoyance you feel on a rainy afternoon. No, it is a full-blown spiritual crisis. It's that nameless, hollow feeling that settles in when your constant search for diversion just stops working. It threatens to reveal that your life is built on, well, nothing at all. Kierkegaard saw this as completely fundamental to being human. He traces boredom all the way back to the dawn of creation. In his view, this isn't some modern problem we can fix with a new app or another streaming service. It's woven right into the fabric of our existence. It's the one thing you can never, ever escape. So, if boredom is totally inescapable, what's a sophisticated aesthete to do? They don't just surrender, oh no. They develop a master plan, an almost spiritual discipline that's dedicated to one thing: keeping life interesting. And this becomes the aesthete's life's work. He calls it the rotation method. It's this highly reflective, very disciplined art of appreciation, all designed to conquer boredom. But, as we're about to find out, there are two very different ways to go about it. Okay, so the common way, what Kierkegaard calls the vulgar method, is just to change the scenery. Bored in the country, move to the city. Tired of Europe, go to Asia. But the advanced aesthete knows this is a fool's game. They practice the artistic method. They don't change the soil, they change the way they cultivate it. And this really gets to the core of the refined aesthete's strategy: limitation. The real art of avoiding boredom, they believe, comes from learning to see the same old thing in a brand new way, finding novelty not in a new country, but in a new perspective. It's all about mastering your inner world to squeeze more quality out of every single experience. I mean, it sounds like a pretty clever solution, right? A life of refined, controlled pleasure where you masterfully sidestep the pitfall of boredom. But this entire structure, this whole clever plan, is built on a foundation of sand. And that means it's heading for an inevitable collapse. Because it doesn't matter how sophisticated the method is, the aesthetic life is plagued by a kind of spiritual sickness. It's a condition that most people living this way don't even have a clue that they have. Okay, this right here is the key to everything. For Kierkegaard, despair is not just being sad or feeling hopeless. It's a deep sickness of the spirit. It's the state of having a fractured self, of refusing to make the choices and commitments that actually forge a real, unified you. It's a flat-out refusal to take responsibility for your own existence. And this leads to a pretty stunning conclusion. Kierkegaard basically argues that every single aesthetic view of life is despair. But why?
Because it's a passive existence. Your happiness depends completely on external things. Your health, your money, sheer luck, things that at the end of the day you have no real control over. And the most chilling part, the vast majority of people in this state are completely unaware of it.
So ultimately, this is the trap. In that constant hunt for infinite possibility, for freedom from commitment, the aesthetic refuses to choose. They refuse to become someone. And this escape from choice doesn't lead to freedom. It leads to a fragmented self, an existence with no core, and a life that's constantly threatened by meaninglessness. And this is where Kierkegaard's 19th century analysis suddenly becomes very, very personal. It forces us to turn around and ask a really difficult question about the way we live our lives right now.
I mean, think about our world today, with its endless feeds and the constant stream of content, all designed to just grab our attention for a second before we swipe to the next thing. In our relentless chase for the interesting, to keep that shadow of boredom away, are we just practicing a new digital version of the rotation method? It's a provocative question for sure, and it shows just how relevant Kierkegaard still is. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.